I wonder what your reactions are, Gene Cummings, to the protests over the handling of the fatal shooting of Trayvon Martin in Florida. Talk about the background.
Okay, well, it's a real tragedy down there for all concerned. Trayvon, a 17-year-old boy, had gone out to buy some candy and was walking back to a relative's house in a gated community when he was spotted by Mr. Zimmerman, who was a neighborhood patrol volunteer in the community, and he was out doing his walk, and he felt that Trayvon appeared suspicious and began following him. And the upshot of it is the two of them did have some encounter, and Trayvon ended up shot dead, and Mr. Zimmerman had a bloody nose. It's interesting as we learn more, the Trayvon, the young man, was on the cell phone with his girlfriend just moments and perhaps during the altercation itself, which has raised a lot of questions about the account that Mr. Zimmerman gave to the police. The police down there didn't charge Mr. Zimmerman with homicide, and that is what the protesters are demanding, and further investigation and charges be brought. But he had said that they had had a fight, that he had lost track of Trayvon and was going back to his car when something happened, and the result was Trayvon's death. The cell phones suggest that that was not at all the case, because Trayvon said to his girlfriend on the phone, someone is following me, and then there was another phone call, and he said, oh my gosh, he's back. So very, pretty big conflicts between those two stories, and of course the community wants a real, very good, strong investigation and charges to be brought.
David Korn.
It's a complete tragedy, and the police were completely irresponsible. They drug tested the body of the victim, but barely questioned or investigated the fellow who shot him dead. I mean, there's no doubt about that. A lot of this has to do with the stand your ground laws, which allow people to go out there and say, well, I thought I was being threatened. And these are laws that the NRA is trying to get passed in every state of the union. They're already present in 26, where you can make the argument that you thought you were under threat, and therefore you're allowed to use deadly force without the duty to retreat. You can't just, you don't have to walk away, and it's up to the prosecutors to say that you are wrong. The prosecutors have to prove that you were mistaken to believe you were under deadly threat. So it's a much bigger issue than this one tragedy. And we have a piece up on motherjones.com this morning about a meeting that was here in Washington a few days ago with Justice Department officials, black lawmakers from the Hill, and officials from the town of Sanford. And the mayor passed on the recordings of these 9/11 and police calls, saying that he'd been up for nights listening to them over and over again and asking the Justice Department to investigate his own police department. He was obviously heartbroken over this, and it still is inconceivable that the police department let this body sit there for 3 days.
Jennifer Rubin.
I think it demonstrates a few things. One, race remains a flashpoint in American society. We can try to get away from it, but it reoccurs. The second is this troubling intersection of politics and our legal process. On one hand, we want certainly people to raise great injustices publicly. We want public officials to be accountable. On the other hand, we don't want a lynch mob out there either, and the investigative process has to go forward. There's some question about whether the president should comment on it. I think that would be a mistake for to the detriment of the prosecution. Remember, or at least I remember way back when Richard Nixon commented on Charles Manson. It's not a good idea for the executive branch to weigh in. And yet you do have this tension between public accountability and the preservation of the justice system. I do not think in this case that the local police, based upon the facts that Gene and David outlined, behaved appropriately. And this goes to a whole set of other issues regarding local police and their level of professionalism, their level of training, and the rest. And I think all of those issues are going to be raised to the forefront when we get to the bottom of this.
Hold on, Gene.
Well, the investigation now is really at an odd spot because the local police chief now has stepped aside, so he won't handle it. The local prosecutor has stepped aside.
He's suspended, but some say he's going to be out permanently.
Yes, he just stepped aside from the case. The powers that be may ultimately remove him, depending upon what is revealed by a real investigation. Clearly, the Justice Department is engaging, but and the governor of Florida has assigned a task force also to investigate. So the community and the family will get some scrutiny of what happened and perhaps some answers. That certainly will not compensate them for this young man who went out and bought a bag of Skittles, and that became the crime.
David.
It's important to note that there wouldn't be none of this investigation without the public outcry. This happened, what was it, February 26th, and now it's a month later, and nothing happened.
Why?
Because the police kept it quiet. And there are cases like this all across the country. Al Sharpton, the MSNBC host now, is leading the cause in this regard. But I was talking to him just the other day, and he says he's getting calls, and he got called by the local attorney handling this case. And then he started making an issue, and others started picking up around that time. But it was a good couple of weeks before it became a national issue. And now there are other cases we're learning about under similar circumstances.
And
so I understand that you don't want to have political, the politicalization of investigations, but without politics, there would be no investigation.
Without the people.
Yes.
And we are going to devote an entire hour to this subject on Monday. Trayvon Martin, of course, but also the broader national issues.